Good morning. All right, coming at you for the last chapter of the semester. So our last lecture guide, and then all you'll have left to complete are the current events assignment and the Lego assignment in lieu of the courthouse visit, and then your final. So this is a long chapter. So we'll probably do it in a couple of parts, but it's my favorite chapter because it's what I do most at work. So, it's something that's really applicable to all of you, whether you've purchased a house before, sold a house, or in the future if you're going to buy a house, or if you rent, because we're also going to talk about leasing. So this is all things real estate related. So it's pretty applicable, and I think that you'll find it to be useful. So, you'll recall last chapter, chapter 23, we talked about personal property, so that's stuff that can move. This is the opposite of that. This is real property, real estate. So, when we talk about the first part, elements of real property, number one, real property consists of, point A, the soil, minerals, water, and natural structures on or beneath the Earth's surface. So the soil, minerals, water, and natural structure. So when you buy real estate, all of that's included. Okay? Point B, it also includes the airspace above the surface, the airspace. And point C, it includes the natural and cultivated plant life and vegetation, as well as its produce, until that produce is harvested and then it's movable and becomes personal property. Okay? So when we talk about what all is included in a deed when you sell your real estate, we're talking about soil, minerals, water, natural structures, the airspace, and then the plant life and vegetation. All of that's included when you buy your real estate. What's also included is number 2, a fixture, which is an item of personal property. So it starts as personal property, but it's become so closely associated with real property that it's legally regarded as part of that real property. So my house, it started out as bricks, as windows, as cabinets, as all these things that were personal property because they're movable. Say if I have a shed out back, that thing is movable until it becomes so closely associated with the real property that it's then considered a fixture that's part of the real estate. So obviously when I deed somebody my real estate, that not only includes the land, it includes the house that I've built on it, because it's become so affixed and so associated with the real property that it's now part of the real property. Usually the way we kind of determine that is, would something cause damage if you tried to remove it? If you tried to remove a fixture and it caused damage, then chances are it's become so affixed to the real property that taking it means it's no longer personal property that's easily movable. It's now part of the real estate. Okay? All right, ownership interest. When you buy property, there's really 2 different ways we're going to talk about you can own property. The first one is called fee simple, and that's the most common ownership I see in real estate is when somebody buys property, they're buying fee simple interest. What that means is an ownership interest in real property that point A, affords its owner the exclusive rights to possess and use realty for any legal purpose. So there are no exclusions. I own my house and I have the right to possess it and use it for any legal purpose. Nobody else does, just me. Point B, it entitles the owner to convey, C-O-N-V-E-Y, which just means sell or give, the same rights she has in the realty. So I buy it, and then I have the ability to sell it, to give it away, to mortgage it, to do whatever I want with it, because I own it to the exclusion of everybody else. And point C, it potentially lasts forever, passing from each owner to a new buyer, a donee, an heir, an assignee. What that means is I can sell it, I can donate it, I can pass it under my will. I can do anything I want with it because I own the property in fee simple to the exclusion of everybody else. When anybody purchases a house and then goes and mortgages it, whatever, the majority of the time I see that they just own it in fee simple to the exclusion of everybody else. Okay? The other common one, it's not as common anymore, but it is still out there for sure, is if somebody owns a life estate in some property. What that means, and I've got to grab my glasses, hang on. My eyes are killing me. Okay, so a life estate, what that means, it's an interest in real property, affording the holder the exclusive rights to possess and use the realty for the duration, D-U-R-A-T-I-O-N, for the duration of his or some other specified person's life. Okay? So it's an interest where the person who has the life estate can possess it and use it for the duration of their life or somebody else's life. So what that means is, say my parents give me their property as part of their estate plan. What they might do is say, we convey our property to our daughter, Whitney Denson, but we reserve a life estate in the property. What that means is, while my parents are still alive, they have the right to possess and use their property. But when they die, it automatically goes to me. Okay, it's kind of just another way of passing your property along to somebody, but still retaining control in the right to use the property while you're still alive. What you could also do is say, we give the property to our daughter, Whitney Denson, but we reserve the right to live there so long as, some other person is alive. So, for the life of her brother. So it doesn't have to be just for their life. It could be based on the life of somebody else. But at the end of the day, what it means is during your life or during that person's life, they have the right to use it as if they owned the property. But when they die or when that other person dies, whoever's life that the life estate is based on, there's somebody else it's automatically going to go to. Okay, so they don't own fee simple in the property. They can't sell it without the other people's permission. They can't, they don't have it to the exclusive right of anybody else because there's somebody else that's going to get it upon their death. It's not forever because they can't give it to somebody in their will because it goes away when they die. So it's a much different interest, but it is something that we see a lot of people do whenever they try to plan for do their estate planning. It may be that instead of giving the property in their will, they go ahead and give the property now but keep a life estate. So it's an option. Point A under life estate. Because the life estate terminates after the specified person's death, the holder must keep the realty in a good state of repair and may have to pay the property taxes during their tenancy. So basically, because somebody else has the right to use and own and possess the property after your death, you have to take care of it in the meantime. Okay? Otherwise, I could let my house go. And, I don't have to I own my house to the exclusive right. I own it in fee simple. I can do whatever I want with it. That's not the case if you just have a life estate because somebody else is going to own that eventually. And so you have to keep it in a good state of repair. And then along those same lines is point B. You cannot commit waste, W-A-S-T-E, meaning the life tenant may not use the real property in a manner that damages or destroys its value. Okay, so you can't commit waste, which just means don't destroy the property's value. Because again, you don't own it to the exclusion of everybody else. Okay, a couple of other ways that we're going to talk about. So assuming that you own property in fee simple, meaning you own it to the exclusion of everybody else. You have the greatest ownership interest in that property. There's a couple of ways that you can own it with other people. Like my husband and I, we own our house together. Most married couples do. So what does that look like? So concurrent ownership on the top of page number 2. This means persons who share ownership rights simultaneously in particular property are said to have concurrent ownership. Okay, concurrent ownership, meaning more than one person owns the property in fee simple. There's 2 types we're going to talk about. Number 1 is a tenancy in common. Tenancy in common. So this means joint ownership of property in which each party owns an undivided interest that passes to his or her heirs at death. So what that means is if you own property in tenancy and your tenants in common, that means when the property was deeded to you, say it's to my brother and me. My brother owns a half interest in the property and I own a half interest in the property. That means when I die, my half interest either goes to the people that I gave it to in my will, or if I don't have a will, it goes to my heirs. The same with my brother's half interest. When he dies, then the property either goes to whoever he gave it to under his will, or if he doesn't have a will, to his heirs. So we both have control over our half interest. Now, say you have 4 people that are tenants in common. They each have a 4th interest. They each retain control over that undivided 1/4 interest, and then it goes to their heirs at their death. Okay? On the flip side, number 2 is a joint tenancy. A joint tenancy. Hello, Hallie. Do you want to say hi to everybody? You're hungry? Okay, just 1 second. Okay, a joint tenancy. What that means is joint ownership of property in which each co-owner owns an undivided portion of the property, and on the death of one of the joint tenants, his or her interest automatically passes, just 1 second, to the surviving joint tenant. So a joint tenancy, it's still a joint ownership, but on the death of one of the joint tenants, his or her interest automatically passes to the surviving joint tenant. This, just 1 second. This is how, just stay right there for a second. This is how most married couples hold title. So my husband and I own our house as joint tenants in survivorship. So that means he has a half interest in the property, I have a half interest in the property, but because we own it in survivorship, when I die, my half interest automatically goes to him, and it's as if he owns the property by himself from the get-go. Same for him. If he dies first, his half interest automatically goes to me as the surviving joint tenant, and it's as if I owned it outright from the get-go. So if you're a joint tenant and you have the survivorship rights, you can't leave your half interest to somebody else under your will, or it doesn't go to your heirs. It automatically goes to those surviving people. And the difference is, in the deed, it has to have that language. So our deed says the property is conveyed to Whitney Denson and Chase Denson as joint tenants with rights of survivorship. So it has to have that magic language in there. And that's how most married couples hold title, because, typically they would be each other's heirs anyways, either under the will or whatever. But that's the way most married couples hold title, and it's how other people hold title too, even if they're not married. They don't have to be married. But it just means that it automatically goes to the other person, nothing to do with your will, nothing to do with your heirs at all, automatically goes to the surviving person. Okay, I'm going to stop this one, get a snack for my kid. I'll be right back.